Everything should be all good right on here. All right. Things have loaded up now, so aloha there. And we just finished reading two articles from Vice under the gaming section regarding Twitch streamers streaming to Russian audiences. And I spent 24 hours in Britain's biggest bingo hall. So it does show how differently these articles can be. One is about current issues in a serious manner. The other one, not much of a serious, but an endearing manner. And endearing, um, it is a colorful way of reading through various different uh, articles. One has a tone that is in. I mean, the other tone would be what you would consider a modest, but the other one is not considered unmodest, but more in a upbeat, explicit way. How do you say it? You know, having a bunch of swear words and an upbeat tone resembles more of a less than modest tone, more of an upbeat, oh, upbeat, explicit tone. I think I just got the words from my mouth from there. From my mouth, not from my head, because I can't think. Now, what I do want to go through is this one that is not neither tech nor life, it's just in its own realm. Is it an opinion piece? Or is it just under, yeah, just says under gaming. I mean, actually going through the articles, let me see. This is Mother of Tech by Vice, alrighty. Now, let's go with life. See what this one is under. Life. Okay, so it does look like this topic in particular is gaming itself, and that all these gaming articles are under the gaming section, but they don't primarily talk about gaming, but rather things that are correlated to gaming but are in other categories, most likely because people would read those categories other than gaming. That does show how most people who would read about gaming news would either go to specific news platforms like IGN, Kotaku, Polygon, and for other content, I mean, there's primarily YouTube, Twitch, Amazon. I mean, I could even go to the other ones like Daily Motion, Vimeo, but people get their news in other places. It also goes to show how the audience who consumes gaming media, well, let's say gaming news, and other gaming medias would go to niche particular areas online, not just every news place. You don't go to AP, NPR, or anything like NBC, or CNN, Fox News, or any of those chained news stations. Even though they have a few gaming articles, but what is it? Was it recently there was a article about Elden Ring that really rubbed people the wrong way because it had a I'm trying to remember much of the article that I read because the way I would think about it is that it tried to include various topics related to actually, yeah, life and when it comes to current events, so international news, because it probably talks about the pandemic and yeah, in a detailed way, understanding people's things and stuff. So yeah, that would make people scurry. But furthermore, eh, if anyone's interested, I could always go back and read old articles and see how things are. Hell, the great thing about reading past info is the power of hindsight is 2020. That you know, there's a lot more things to talk about it than when it first came out. So, gaming. Historical accuracy matters in video games. Here's why. Games aren't just portals for escapism, they can help us understand the way the world once was. Shout outs to Assassin's Creed Odyssey. And yeah, there was also Origins with learning about Egyptian history. All Assassin's Creed includes historical accuracies and authenticity. However, Origins and Odyssey stand apart because they have a feature where it's a museum curator mode. You just walk around and get singing tidbits of things in ancient Egyptian and Greece life. So, yeah. And, obviously, me talking about history does show how historical accuracy is a thing that I do see the matter of. This article is by Chris van der Voorn. Vroon? Or Vaughan? This is from Amsterdam NL. So, March 30th, 2022. Yeah, 3:45 a.m. Hope you got enough sleep there. This article originally appeared on Vice Netherlands. Okay, so it does show that other Vice news sites are coming through the main page. So, more content. In April 2019, the world watched in shock as Notre Dame was engulfed in flames. Significant damage to such an important landmark was tough for the city, and rebuilding efforts began as soon as the structure was stable, with potential design partners emerging in the most unconventional of places. Let me guess. Assassin's Creed. For example, fans of the long-running video game franchise Assassin's Creed suggest using one of the games to help with the restoration of the Gothic Cathedral. Assassin's Creed Unity, the 8th title in the series, is set in Paris during the French Revolution and features a 3D model of the building designed with unerring accuracy. Every buttress, organ, and gargoyle was recreated as faithfully as possible in a 2-year-long project overseen by level designer Caroline Bouzille. Okay, this is Gargoyle. Also, why is it highlighted? It's gonna lead me. Okay, it leads me to this article. No one knows why these medieval statues are pulling their vaginas open. By Xing Xingjing in Vice. Now, understanding that this is understanding artistic culture and customs in their art. And it's funny because I actually am writing a long paper about cultural art and its relation to human expression and human communities throughout the ancient world. And yeah. So that's why it's highlighted. Why? This is Gargoyle. But anywho, the idea that a video game might play a useful role in the reconstruction of one of Europe's most famous buildings was extraordinary. It proved to be little more than a wishful thinking on behalf of the franchise fans, as Ubisoft, the game's publisher, revealed that they will donate 500,000 euros. I remember last time, this is euros, to the rebuilding project, but were never asked to share their model. It's a story that points to an interesting shift in how video games are beginning to perceive by the wider world. Once seen as portals for escapism, games are now inspiring to be more historically accurate. Bookshops are full of historical fiction, and multiplexes regularly screen blockbusters rooted in specific historical eras, and there are now all manners of games applauded for their fidelity to the past. Fidelity. Tomato, tomato. How do designers, video game directors make sure their games are historically accurate though? Why would a studio devote so much time, effort, and attention to digitally reproducing and building on the scale seen in Assassin's Creed? Question mark. Ooh. Hoping to establish why that past had become so prized in a forward-thinking media, Vice spoke to experts on games with historical narratives at their core. I mean, Ghost of Tsushima came way after Assassin's Creed Unity, and from years ago, it does show how people are talking about more and more. I said Ghost of Tsushima because that is the biggest one that really showcased a large public, the Japanese public in the city that Ghost of Tsushima was based around, because now it's a real place in modern Japan, and that they have a financial issue with restoring some old Japanese historical relics, sites, for people and for people to view, to people to live on, restoring and such. And yeah, I don't know if it was a tweet or it was a full article about the Mir in that part of Japan actually commented about him being just astounded about the great works that is spreading Japanese culture around the world, and how it carefully portrays Japanese culture in that light that it made him pretty much blush. I wouldn't say they say exactly that he blushed, but I'm looking at that in my mind exactly, that he is blushing all red and such. Now, Peter Alexander Kovhoff, a researcher of Lenin University, is a linguist and medievalist. As scientists, we love loudly pointing out how things weren't actually like that in the past, he said. People who aren't in our field don't tend to care, or at least not until they make a connection with the way they actually experience the world. Examining how games get historical things wrong definitely piques people's interest. PQs. Yeah, that should be PQs. Let me look at this. This is bothering me. PQs, the state of extension caused by perceived slight on integrity. Okay. Oh, shit. Wait. Peak. Wow. Peak? Peaks. That's another way to say peaks? Well, let's go back to the definition. A state of vexation caused by a perceived slight or integrity, a feeling of wounded pride, but to excite or arouse, especially by provocation, challenge, or rebuff. To arouse anger or resentment and irritate. So definitely piques people's interest. Yeah, it should be the first definition. And all right, it does show that it makes people interested about historical accuracy. When it comes to actually playing games, Kirkhoff enjoys the ones where you get to build cities, especially if they're medieval, even if they tend not to be the old that historically accurate. Many of these games are based on the idea that you can keep developing and expanding a village. It didn't really happen like this in the Middle Ages, he said. Towns weren't just built organically. When people moved into a certain area, they developed plans in advance. It's still the case today, but people often think things were very different in the Middle Ages. And Karakol also consulted on movies and TV shows depicting the Middle Ages, said historical inaccuracy isn't just a problem in the game industry. The common thread in this decision making process is, will people who do not possess any historical knowledge know the difference? I mean, that's the question nowadays, because people are able to search in, what is right, what is wrong, what is accurate information, what is misleading information, because the smartphones and people can easily fact check in their pockets. It's way easier than a few decades ago. Besides, even if accuracy is important to both publishers and consumers, a game still has to be enjoyable. That's why designers often find themselves having to compromise. Ooh, I'm gonna talk. Yeah, I already skimmed through it now. I'm not gonna talk much about it. Because, I'm thinking of World of Tanks. That's the biggest thing. Because World of Tanks being a game where you have a span of so many different model of tanks throughout history, that gameplay wise, pivoting an old type model of a tank versus a newer type, that in real life they were made to surpass other prototypes that didn't make the cut and such. The game also includes prototype tanks that weren't really in service, because the reality is they weren't useful. In the game, it's useful because the points of having them is having them there for playability, content, and expanding more of what the game has to offer. It could be accuracy, it could be fidelity, showcasing a much bigger world than what people have seen. For example, in War II, people usually know about general things in the war, usually key points like D-Day, the storming through Berlin, the Battle of the Bulge, and other things like, I keep on thinking of the Pacific Operation Barbarossa, because that's a big event that happened throughout Soviet history. Same thing with the American campaign when it comes to the Battle of the Bulge, which, saying that out loud, I understand some people don't understand it, because that was actually an important battle for the US, but I wouldn't say much of the Soviets, because that wasn't their front. So it does go to the undertakes, especially the less known parts of World War II, that even though there's a large media for World War II, they really don't talk about all the major battles. Now, sure, the key major battle, sure, but other major battles like the invasion of Sicily in order to conquer Italy, the invasion from North Africa for the Allies to actually have troops in Europe, especially having American troops, and the failed invasion for Commonwealth forces, mainly the UK, and what was it? In Europe, that failed. A predecessor to D-Day. Now, back to World of Tanks. They included all that because, the showcase the wide diversity of, history of tanks. Some experts only know a few tanks, some that were concept, some weren't. But, that's the great thing about the game. Now, they have to change things to make it fair, balance, in order to have fun. It's an entertainment media anyway. They have to make things fun in order for people have to have fun. Now, generally, a level of fun that everybody can participate. There are just those people who really like authentic realism in games, even if they're in a disadvantage. I'm thinking like World War I games, where they're very historically accurate to the point that, yeah, you are role playing as a person in the trench and such. Hey, let me actually go through here. Yeah, he doesn't talk about that. He goes back to Assassin's Creed. Kirkhoff brings up another game in the Assassin's Creed series as an example. In Valhalla, a Viking-themed title, player spends a good amount of time trudging across narrow fields. In reality, these sorts of fields were often half a mile or so wide. You're not going to show that in a game, though, because you'd be walking on the same strip of land for hours. And then, yeah. I wonder if I could actually finish this up. Yeah, I could finish it up. Let me actually read all this straightforward and answer any questions in the end. Designers at Wistfire, an independent developing studio based on Utrecht, employed historical detail in the world building when it makes sense for the story. They're trying to tell in a game, you want to capture the look and feel of a certain time, said Aya de Riddler, a director of Wistfire. We take care with all aspects of the art, making sure our research was thorough and the sources we used were sound. The team takes frequent field trips to make sure they get things right. For their most recent game, Herald, an interactive period drama, they visited numerous museums in the Netherlands. Narrative designer Roy van der Schindelen also journeyed across the North Sea to visit the Kudgy Sark in London, a 19th century merchant ship which inspired the digitally rendered boat at the center of Dutch team's nautical mystery. However, Wistfire also had adapted the research to their game. The rooms of the actual Cutlery Star was tiny, but it had been modeled totally accurate in Herald. The experience for a player would have been visually unappealing and claustrophobic. Historical accuracy can play an educational role, too. It's very frustrating to us when people minimize conversation about the Netherlands, colonial past on purpose, or simply do not understand it, said Dead Riddler. We want to see if we could develop a game that could invite the player to experience colonialism in the 19th century. This experience is meant to introduce gamers to the source of many of the current issues we face. Kirkhoff agreed with Wistfire's stance on this. I love to see games incorporate our scientific knowledge little by little so that people are introduced to the idea that the world of the past is recognizable, but was very different at the same time, he said. One of the reasons I'm so keen of historical accuracy in games is because games as a medium are very effective when it comes to changing existing perceptions. And end of article. Now, his holiday was cancelled, so he went on vacation on the video game instead. This is suggesting a bunch of other articles. There's another one for tech. Steam reviews slam historical accuracy of Hitler's balls and sex with Hitler. Oh, actually, no, I got the title wrong. Let me say this. Historical accuracy of Hitler's balls and sex with Hitler. End quote. Because, yeah, people actually pointed that out. And I know this because the case people would point out is that you do have to be historically accurate in this because another game was historical accurate. Sniper Elite. Let me actually get this right. So people. Yeah. Well, if they want, they could actually try to purchase the game. But yeah. It was Sniper Elite. Was it? Yeah. Sniper Elite 2. That was the game that All right, yeah, let me finish. Yeah, Sniper Elite series is a franchise that actually it's pretty wacky. But one of the games, Sniper Elite 2, which was set in World War II, where you play as a sniper against the Axis forces, mainly ones in Germany. So from North Africa to Europe, it's been a while. Because the Sniper Elite games, yeah, it's really interesting. Because it's also a game where you primarily play as a sniper, and it's not like a modern RPG where you have a character who has different builds, so they could go guns blazing, they could go stealth. It is a type of stealth game where you do play as a sniper, and you can roam around, go gun blazing, but you're in a heavily disadvantage. Yet it's not much of a traditional stealth game, i.e., Splinter Cell, Metal Gear Solid. So you can play this whatever you weigh under the confinement that you play as a sniper. So far distance marksmanship is required while playing through a series. But yeah, one of the missions you actually had Adolf Hitler, you got a opportunity to assassinate him, and they made the character of Hitler very accurate to the point that the testy is actually won. The reason why, because the Sniper Elite series prides itself with X-ray vision similar to Mortal Kombat, where you could shoot an opponent wherever you want, and it could show an X-ray of what part of the body, what part of the organ, what part of the missing tissue that you have shot out, and just destroy it. Because I'm thinking about the testes thing, and yeah, you could do that with several other people, and yeah, it would show in explicit detail that, and it's interesting. Now, that game became really popular for it, especially making a gimmick for that. So, I take it that since people know that fact, a good amount of people in the gaming community, when they see this game, they expected it to be historically accurate. They weren't, and they had a problem with that. So it does show that once creating a standard for historical accuracies in games means that more people are picking it up. I mean, that was the case with Assassin's Creed when it came out 2007. It prided itself towards it, and then later on it started priding it more and more itself, to the point that other games are putting some focus into that, having educational fact-checking departments that shares whatever culture, whatever history that games try to set itself, especially if it's a historical piece. And people are used to that round with detail, and they have a enjoyable experience, because it does show that people do enjoy understanding how past lives or ancestors, human ancestors, lived. I mean, that's the case with Far Cry Primal, that the main gimmick of the game that later people have a fondness of, even years later, is because of its setting and how the fact that in the game everything is subtitled, because they speak in Ooga Booga languages where there someone took the time to record and make it very authentic. And then to to the most popular games like Red Dead Redemption 2, where they spend an aching amount of time at making it historically authentic and accurate to the T. One of the most infamous things they do, which I do want to clarify that it is also related to the first Red Dead Redemption back in 2010, where they did a lot of research, and they probably used that research for the next game, because a lot of things relating to the history of that franchise can trace back to the first Red Dead Redemption game and its inception. But with Red Dead Redemption 2, people will learn later of how much was put into it, especially with the amount of crunch work that was just put on to the game. But anywho, that was the article. So that was like a pretty fun. I'll come back next time. Other than that,